So the question I often get sort of challenged with is, well, DA has all this stuff in it. Are you kidding me? We've got to do all of that? Well, no, that's by no means what Discipline Agile would support doing, nor would you get any value more than likely in doing that. So some of the discussions I'll have, and I mean, if you're a Scrum Master, you're a team level coach, or an enterprise level coach, you've got whatever, some amount of experience with Agile coaching, more than likely you're going to have familiarity with the Scrum Guide. So Scrum Guide, 13 pages long, right? So we saw in 2020 it was reduced, and there's a lot of comfort to having a very small body of knowledge, right? I mean, you can read the Scrum Guide pretty quickly, right? 13 pages. It's quite refined, right? The guide itself is pretty stable. So it's high quality, right? I mean, the things that are in it are written well, and it's a pretty easy read. But is it enough? 3 roles, right? Developers, product owner, and Scrum Master, right? And those 3 roles together form the Scrum team. 5 events, so the events in Scrum, the sprint planning, daily Scrum, sprint review, and sprint retrospective. And there's 3 artifacts: product backlog, sprint backlog, and increment. So a lot of the discussions that I have with trying to distill why Discipline Agile at least looks or appears or is perceived to be very complicated is kind of balancing it with the Scrum Guide. The other thing that I like to draw some attention to is that it probably isn't enough. And it recognizes that, right in the very beginning of the Scrum Guide, right, where I've underlined, the Scrum framework is purposely incomplete, only defining the parts required to implement Scrum theory, right? So as a framework, as a prescriptive approach, it's got well-formed content in it. But there are things that you're going to potentially, or I would say, at least in my experience, almost always going to need in addition to this. Right? Now, one of the ways that you can keep a small body of knowledge and one that again is rather static, which rather mature, is that you don't have a lot in it that's going to cover every potential situation, right? Because as you're sort of now getting variations, right, supporting different contexts, you're going to need a certain amount of content, a certain amount of guidance to kind of pull that in. So one approach is this. It's, well, we're purposely incomplete. We've got some gaps that you're probably going to need to fill. The question then becomes, well, where are you going to get that from, right? Where are you going to go and find some of the things that might solve some of the challenges that you've had? Where are you going to find practices, techniques, strategies to improve the way that you're delivering the value that you're capable of delivering? Well, one way is you can go to your coach, right? If you've got a Scrum Master and you've got a team level Agile coach, and they do have some amount of experience and knowledge with respect to outside of Scrum, yeah, they're there to be able to coach you on that. Maybe you've got an Agile coach in your organization. Maybe you know somebody who's, an Agile coach, just meaning that, yep, they might know Scrum, right? A time box based approach. Maybe they know a little bit of a flow based, right? They know a lean type of approach using Kanban, maybe an intersection of the two, and so forth. So maybe what you're going to do is you're going to go to Google, right? And see, a lot of times, we hear, oh, well, DA's competitor is Scrum, or DA's competitor is a scaling framework like SAFe or Large Scale Scrum or Nexus or some of these other ones, right? I personally feel that Discipline Agile's competitor is actually Google, because that's where you probably are going to also go to maybe look for, Agile practices or user stories or what's a definition of ready or what's Kanban, right? What's an iteration versus a sprint? Well, yeah, I mean, you go to something like Google and you can find a lot of information. I've got the blue arrow there. Sometimes I like to just hit, I'm feeling lucky and see where it takes me. Well, you can also go to books, right? You can, there's lots of great books on Agile and Agile practices. So books, you can, use the, telephone, or Zoom or other methods, I guess, these days. But yeah, call a colleague. Hey, I know somebody who, was at a company that adopted Agile. I'll see what they did. Or, hey, I know somebody else in the organization, they've been using an Agile approach for a while. Let me check in with them. So we've got lots of potentially different places that you can find information, but it is somewhat disparate. And sometimes you got to kind of be able to filter through all of this. And then you're still maybe missing some of the information, which would be, well, if I pick this practice and I do this thing with my team, then, is it going to work with something else? Or are there some trade-offs or, positives and detriments as far as how we might make some of these selections in the things that we think we might get value from?